yes, I think she had to retract that statement again, which means the central government or the state government, there is some kind of a disconnect between the two in resolving this issue, which we understand.
Yes.
If a crisis continues for over 4 months, something is very serious. And the first thing, as I said in our last discussion also, if at all you have to give medicine, you have to understand, you have to first diagnose that particular disease or the ailment. If a crisis goes on for a long time, I think there is no political will, as I said earlier. You should have the political will, but that political will has to be backed up by political wisdom and acumen. That information, political acumen and wisdom, these are very important factors as to how that political will be a help to, in fact, bring normalcy in the state.
Yes,
again, I would say that,
yeah, Mr. Ibungochoubi, but the fact that even with all the presence of this huge military personnel, as you said, that peace should be won in spirit and by winning the hearts of the people. But back in your mind, do you think that this presence, the heavy military presence, is somehow a threat, is somehow waiting for a threat or to combat a threat at the Myanmar border in the geopolitics sense? What do you think about that?
As we know it, that having a very unfriendly neighbor or a particular neighbor which is politically not stable, that is a major threat to any neighboring country. Myanmar, for the last so many years, it has never been a stable nation, and the military junta, despite the elections, despite the movement for the democratic movement, the military junta had always been in power. And how the military junta handles its people or its internal crisis is, in a way, it's a kind of a chronic ailment, disease that will have its impact on the neighboring states. Unfortunately, the kind of illegal infiltration from neighboring country, they are either refugees or they are runaway teams to save their own lives, or in some way are they in collusion with any of the armed groups in the neighboring states of the country. That itself is something that the government has to explain to the people. And are they a part of the present crisis in Manipur? That is what I think we have to understand, and the government has to explain. And with regard to what, sorry, I mean, I won't take long. I think we can always shift to Luwang, and then we can exchange ideas. But my point is, if at all Burma or Myanmar is a very, very unstable government or military junta, the movement for the democracy is always scuttled in the midway. And it has its own impact in the neighboring country. And Manipur having a very, very porous and unmanned, unguarded international boundary, we are bound to have people from across the country, and it will definitely bring about a democratic profile, its own political stability, and any kind of development, economic, political, socio, we will be having that impact from the people coming from any kind of neighboring state, because they are not stable.
Yes. Okay, thank you for your input. It's been very insightful. I'll be coming to Mr. Junior Luwang. My question is that it's a fact that China has a deep involvement with Myanmar. They have been investing a lot of projects, infrastructure projects, there's economic corridor projects. They have invested over $25 billion in the last, since 1988 to 2019. Such a huge involvement and a huge interest in Myanmar. And my question is that won't such a huge investment and involvement pull the military junta that is currently ruling the country of Myanmar towards China, and will it cause any kind of strain to India's relation with Myanmar?
India's relation with whom?
With Myanmar, by the pull of this China's investments.
Amrita, the fact is that Myanmar has always been influenced or controlled by China for a very, very long time. There are two countries which are surviving only because of China. One is North Korea, another is Myanmar. So there's a fact of life, and the Indian government has been cooperating or has been extending the peace initiative to the government of Myanmar. Whatsoever the former government is there in Myanmar, because you have to live with your neighbor. You can't, make your neighbor uncomfortable. You can change a lot of things, but you can't change your neighbor. It's a fact that China controls Myanmar. I'll give the figures. Their total trade involvement with Myanmar amounts to around 30% of total Myanmar's trade relationship with other countries, which roughly accounts for around 30% of Myanmar's trade, whereas India accounts for around say 6%. I mean, to be very specific, it's around 5.67% of Myanmar's involvement with other countries. I mean, India ranks like fourth or fifth in terms of trade partnership with Myanmar. Well, so there's a fact of life. China controls Myanmar. Second question which is more important is how it's a threat to India's geopolitics.
Yes, and
I don't think that as on today there's a major threat, because China, I don't think, will interfere in the northeast to the extent some of us apprehend, for various reasons. Because except for, of course, Arunachal Pradesh, in the Manipur context, I don't see any good reason for China to intervene majorly. Although some of the ex-army personnel have indicated to possible involvement of China in the present crisis, basically saying that a number of Delhi-based insurgent groups are being trained and supplied by China, more specifically in a place called Kumni. I don't know.
Yes, in the Yunnan province. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the narrative which is going on in the media. But I'm not very sure whether China would be able to influence Myanmar to the extent of, say, encouraging some kind of a border conflict with India. Myanmar on its own will not be able to afford any kind of stimulus or any kind of with India. One, for the reason that its military is very small, minuscule compared to India's military. In fact, the Indian military itself has been supplying a number of second-hand aircrafts and helicopters to Myanmar for its counter-offensive against the so-called PDF, the revolutionary group in Myanmar, which is basically a pro-democracy organization.
Yes.
Second is that I don't see any good reason for China also to come in direct conflict with India on this count. What at third and most important is that if you see the whole junta policy for a long time, the junta policy is basically against the pro-democracy people in Myanmar, which largely consists of the Chin Kuki people.
Yes.
In Myanmar. If you see the kind of say composition and the other insurgent groups which are basically rebelling against the Myanmar government right now, apart from the PDF, they have this Chin National Front, Chinland Defense Force, Chinland National Defense Force, and then they have something called Zomi Revolutionary Army Eastern Command.
Yes.
Apart from, of course, Kuki National Army Burma. If you know it, Kuki National Army Burma is a split from the Kuki National Army, which is operating in Manipur, and of course they are under the suspension of operation agreement. They just split in 2013. So given the fact that people who are involved in the so-called pro-democracy movement largely consist of the Kuki Chin tribe people, I don't see any good reason for the Myanmarese government to come and start hostilities against India. That's the most important part.
But then again, to interject you, Mr. Luwang, but for the past, for all the projects that India has been investing in Myanmar, like the Trilateral Asian Highway, like the Kaladan project, that has been stalled. It has been delayed to be completed, which has to be completed almost by 4 years ago.
Right.
So do you think the stalling and the delay, is it a kind of a signal from the Myanmar government, but as you say that it is not? Could it be something else?
See, the highway project and the Kaladan project have been delayed for various reasons.
Okay.
One is that instability in Myanmar and their incapability or the delay decisions on various aspects of these two projects.
Okay.
The second reason is that there also has been a lot of law and order issues created by a number of vested interest groups in Myanmar, namely by the Arakan army.
Yes.
I mean, there have been abductions and killings by this particular group. Now, the third is that a number of contractors which were involved in the execution of these two projects have gone bankrupt possibly because of the government of Myanmar. Because if they don't like a contractor who are working on a particular project from the previous regime, then they would create all kinds of difficulties so as to create some kind of a financial insolvency for these contractors. So these are basically three important reasons which the government of India is trying to tackle at the moment. In fact, our minister, Mr. R.K. Ranjan, also made a similar statement in Aizawl about 1 or 2 years before about the Kaladan project.
Okay.
The various delays caused by the government of Myanmar. To give a very simple answer to your question, I don't see much of an international dimension to the whole crisis. The whole crisis has been, to an extent, expedited by or encouraged by some form of illegal immigration from Myanmar. I'm not saying so, but the government is saying so. I'll give some background. Okay. On 9th August, Amit Shah made a statement on the floor of the parliament that apart from, he didn't talk about the May 27th Manipur High Court order, although he says so in Manipur. That was his triggering point. But in parliament he said, although he quoted or he mentioned the name wrongly, he said Kuki National Army, or no, Kuki Defense Force. Okay. That's what is in parliament. The whole crisis in Manipur has been triggered by alleged recorded illegal immigration of migrants from Burma, the Chin Kuki tribe. That's what he said in parliament. Although the correct name of the organization should be PDF, which is People's Defense Force. It's not democratic. I was thinking as democratic with Defense Force. So it's PDF, People's Democratic Force, which largely consists of a number of member different states, including the Chin Kuki tribe.
Yes.
Second is that even the Solicitor General of India also said in the Supreme Court, and I was there when he was arguing. Even today also hearing took place. On that also I'll make a submission. He made a statement before the Chief Justice of India. He said that right or wrongly, subject to confirmation, but I'll just quote him. He said there are number of bodies lying in the box in Impal do not seem to be Indian citizens. That's what he said. Okay. I'm just quoting him.
Okay.
Today, I was in the court. I just came back from hearing. He told in fact, a discussion was taking place on appointment of nodal officers to assist the Judicial Commission, which has been set up by the Supreme Court of India and working under the supervision of the Supreme Court of India. So people were coming up with different suggestions on appointment of nodal officers to assist the commission. And in lighter vein, he said, although how super crass it could look, he said that we should have nodal officers even in Myanmar. So the government narrative also seems to be that the whole crisis has been triggered not solely but largely by the so-called perception or the actual ground truth of illegal immigrants infiltrating from Myanmar. So to answer your question in brief, I don't see as on today there is a international dimension. The Burmese government also has got its own problems, and the large part of this problem has been created by members of the Kuki.
Okay, we seem to have a disconnect. Mr. Junior Luwang, can you hear us?
People. Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you, but can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please continue.
Yeah. So for the military junta also, the Kuki Chin people has increasingly become a headache for some time since they took over the government in February 2021. So that's the narrative. Now, if you see even the steps taken by the government of Manipur or government of India, they have scrapped this free movement regime, which is called FMR, I think somewhere starting from around practically from the commencement of COVID, and now still continues. So we have stopped these free passes to Myanmar and Indian citizens in its other territory,
Yes,
say
right.
within 16 kilometers, and then you come back on the same day.
Right.
So that scheme or that arrangement can scrap as in today. They will scrapped by the government of Manipur reportedly. Uh, Second, or the most important part is that the government also has taken a lot of steps to fence the border. As in today, out of say 368 kilometers of the Myanmar Manipur border, just around 10% has been fenced. Now the
Yes.
government is thinking of taking steps to fence the remaining part of the Manipur-Myanmar border. So if that comes along, then it will help quite a lot in say controlling the flow of illegal immigrants from Myanmar. Uh, See, it's not about illegal immigrants or their flow alone, which is posing a problem. If you, I mean, everybody knows it. Burma is a part of Golden Triangle, which basically consists of three countries: Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand. So, of course, there is a possible extension of the triangle towards Manipur. As you
Yes.
know it, to some part to many parts of Manipur, habitated by a number of tribal groups. I will not name a specific tribal group, but I will
Yes.
put in this general context. So it's not about the threat of illegal immigrants only. It's also more about the possible extension of Golden Triangle towards Manipur.
Yes. Yes.
We have official documents on record. The Assembly Committee headed by Paulina Hawkins, they
Yes.
themselves have come out with a report which basically says that more than 2,000 illegal immigrants from Myanmar were detected. And in last September, around 4,000 illegal Myanmaris were pushed back to Myanmar from Mori itself. So the biggest challenge is our say steps to effective steps to tackle illegal immigration
Yes.
and the so-called narco terrorism across our border. It's not about that kind of international pressure that would create a tussle between India and Myanmar or India and China. That's my reading of the whole situation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Junior Luwang, for your input. I'll be coming to Mr. Ibungochoubi now. As Mr. Junior Luwang said that Mr. Luwang has put out that he sees no international involvement regarding the ongoing conflict and all of the presence. But my question to you is that I would like to know from you if there is any kind of international angle. So my question is that recently we know that Russia have given about 6 Sukhoi 30 fighter jets to Myanmar Air Force and also gave a training to a lot of their troops in their helicopter gunships. And they are being used to suppress the Chin rebels bordering Manipur and Mizoram. So is there any likelihood of this conflict in the Chin state spilling over to Manipur and a development of a bigger geopolitical scenario?
Russia, France, Italy, US, these are, in fact, the United Kingdom, they are manufacturers of great fighter aircrafts. And as we know that the kind of the arms market or the countries buying different aircrafts from different countries, it has been a regular process.
Yes.
Whether your question is whether Russia's 6 Sukhoi aircrafts will have an impact.
Yes.
Now, I don't think that number six numbers of any kind of a fighter aircraft is going to have an imbalance, because I think very recently India did buy, I think 3 dozens of so-called Rafale fighter aircrafts from France very recently.
Yeah.
And I think India has over, I don't know, but I think India has over nearly 300 Sukhoi 30 aircrafts in India, above which India already has Mirage, 50 numbers, and so on and so forth. Even you have the MiG-21. Having, of course, 6 Sukhoi in a neighboring country, maybe definitely they might like to put it to the optimum use. Whether it will be for their internal security or for their external security. I do not see any kind of an impact with 6 Sukhoi, or if it is going to be some kind of a marketing tactics for Russia to sell their own aircrafts, because the border town, of course we did see some bombardment by the Myanmar government in some of the rebel areas. As I said, you have so many squadrons for their own internal security or for the defense of the country. When India did purchase 36 Rafale, there was no hue and cry. I think India has over, as I said, almost 300 Sukhoi and Mirage, I think about 50 or so. I do not know, because it is subject to correction. In India altogether, India has over 2,000 fighter aircrafts or manning the country and defending the country. Yes, it is also of some concern if Myanmar is buying Sukhoi, whether it will be for their internal security or it will be for their air defense. If at all, Sukhoi is, of course, one of the most technically and scientifically updated aircraft in the world today to reckon with. And I'm sure any kind of a sensible government will put it to the maximum use. And if at all Myanmar is thinking of deploying the aircraft to control or to check the kind of military rebels within their own country, yes, we will have to wait and see whether how the Sukhoi will be put to use. As far as your question on the neighboring country and geopolitics, yes, India is a big country. It has neighboring countries right from the arch rival Pakistan, China, of course Nepal, Bhutan, and then of course we also have Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Myanmar.
Yes, but the reason, Mr. Ibungochoubi, the reason I asked that I put up the involvement of Russia, because China is already deeply involved in Myanmar, we know that, it's a fact. And the involvement of this recent Russian involvement, does it put a strain on the U.S. policy, because the current U.S. government, their policy is to counter any kind of Chinese incursions or any kind of Russian and Chinese joining together. So my question is Myanmar a kind of a new hotbed for kind of a Cold War, some kind of brewing up? Well, what are your thoughts?
Largely, if you look at the recent economic debacle within China and its own political internal conflict in China, China is one of the most, you can say, fast-growing nations in the world, economically and both politically. And whenever there is a growth or whenever there is a massive deployment of forces in and around with the increase in the defense, the neighboring countries are definitely alarmed. And from one point of view, the country called Myanmar has been primarily or some way or the other being dependent on China for many things. In fact, indeed, the government of India also did make an attempt to make diplomatic relations growth. Very recently, in the recent past, the government of India had also extended its olive branches to Myanmar, even by construction of road, by giving different supplies from the ordnance in terms of tanks, vehicles. We have seen in the past, we have reported that also. Yes, coming in Russia and supplying X numbers of aircrafts, yes, there might be some kind of a development which might be happening, whether even Myanmar might be trying to say that if we get anything cheaper than any part of the world, they will procure. In any way, the kind of a geopolitics, whether Russia would be interested to play a part in this area, I wouldn't really see that kind of a thing that would be happening very soon. But whatsoever happens within the territory or within the neighboring countries, it is alarming. And yes, there is always a reason for concern. That is what we have to see in terms of international politics. Yes.
So currently that we do not have to read much into this news is what you're saying, Mr. Ibungochoubi, that we should not be putting a lot of fire that is not there currently in the geopolitics. That's what you're saying, Mr. Ibungochoubi. Okay, thank you so much. I'll be now coming back to Mr. Junior Luwang. Now putting back the lens back on Manipur again, Sri Enbrin and Sri Joramthanga are the two chief ministers of two neighboring states, and they are both bordering Myanmar also. Both states also share similar problems. Do you think it would be fruitful for both the states if both the chief ministers sat down and had a talk on how to resolve this issue? To Mr. Junior Luwang.
Obviously, any kind of talk between the two chief ministers will be very encouraging, but I'm not very sure about the success rate. And here I would like to comment that it's a constitutional impropriety on the part of Joramthanga to raise issues of Jaw tribe unification, calling Kuki MLAs, the Manipur Kuki MLAs and the two insurgent groups to Ajol and have a talk with them. To an extent, that amounts to some kind of encouragement to the present mayhem in Manipur, and a strong word, in fact, would come from the government of India to the government, to the chief minister of Mizoram, to just take his hands off. There's a constitutional impropriety according to me, and that's for the central government to tackle. So I don't think anything is going to happen. Joramthanga is trying to play some kind of a internal type politics for his own both bank considerations and his own politics. That's my reading, and I don't think that the government of India will allow the people, our brothers and sisters in Manipur, to join the Mizoram as a part of Joramthanga's Jaw tribe unification attempt. I don't think that's going to happen. And so if that happens, then there will be surely a dilution of Manipur's territorial integrity, which will be opposed by the Meitei community to the nail and over the dead body. That I think the government of Manipur should be knowing. And if you remember correctly, just three words in an agreement between NSC and IM and the government of India created so much of problem that without territorial limits, when they extended the ceasefire with NSC and IM to any territory within India, then there is a huge uproar in Manipur, leading to the death of 18 people.
Yes.
Of course, natives only. So if those three words were enough for that kind of a mayhem in Manipur, I mean, the government of India should surely know that if any part of Manipur has to be taken out of Manipur and be a part of Mizoram, or any kind of union territory or a separate state has to be formed as out of Manipur, as a part of separate administration process, I don't think that the government of India has surely knows that that's not a solution which is possible, and because they have learned the lesson and they better learn the lesson, and they have their own intelligence feedback. And this IB and all, RO and all, they keep on giving a lot of feedback, local feedback from Manipur and elsewhere from the northeast. So there is something which stands completely ruled out by none other than Amit Shah himself when he was in Manipur. So that's not going to happen. Of course, I have my own views on separate administration, which we can discuss in a separate program. The first thing is that both Nagas and the Kukis in Manipur already have a separate administration under the Indian Constitution, which is under 5th schedule. We already have it, but again, I can go to details, but not right now.
Okay.
The issue is looking later.
Okay.
Just to rejoin to Sir Ibungochoubi's comment and to Amrita's questions on Myanmar buying Sukhoi from Russia, its dynamics with China and all that geopolitics which were discussed.
Yes.
See, Amrita, let's not get distracted by all these developments. In my reading, these weapons which are being procured by Myanmar from various countries, including, say, Russia, France, even India, these are basically for domestic consumption, because very recently they have started bombarding the camps of PDF and other insurgent groups in Myanmar, because the immediate challenge from today is their own revolutionary groups which are opposing the army, the junta political establishment in Myanmar. Second is that the Burmese economy is on its knees right now, with a lot of sanctions being in place by the American government and other developed countries. I don't think the Myanmar government is in a position to create any kind of serious internal trouble in Manipur or elsewhere. Now, the only possible scenario is that, of course, China is busy with a lot of things in South China Sea, and if Ibungochoubi has rightly said, it is now the second most developed country in terms of its economy, because the second largest economy in the world, next to America.
Yes.
So the whole geopolitics has changed. There was a unipolar world dominated by America only, but now there's this some kind of a Cold War developing, but not between Russia and USA. It's now increasingly between China and America in terms of semiconductor business, in terms of space research. If I remember correctly, as reported by CNN, China as on today has the largest Navy fleet in the world. It has surpassed America.
Yes.
It's just a matter of time that China overtakes America in terms of economic size. And that, I'm not saying, reported in even American journals and social media. So America is just waiting its time to be outsmarted by China, and it's surely just going to happen. Now, the only possible worry is that because China wants to have a broader or a longer, say, area of conflict with India, because if you see a lot of, you remember, or we know it all, that there has been a lot of skirmishes between the Chinese army and Indian army in Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh, and all these areas, even somewhere near Bhutan also. So, just to distract or to make the area of conflict wider, maybe China can create some kind of a problem across the border between Myanmar and the Manipur, but through Myanmar. But that I don't think it will be on a large scale. It will be of limited scale. If at all they are interested, but I don't see any reason for China to be largely interested or largely involved in that kind of a geopolitics or a conflict with India, because there is no required. It's a possibility, but a very remote possibility. So that's my take on the issue.
Okay. Thank you for your thoughts. That was interesting. Now I'll be coming to Mr. Ibungochoubi. That in Myanmar, not only are there just the Kuki-Jo on the Burmese, there are also a sizable number of Meiteis in Myanmar, and a sizable number of Naga population also in Myanmar. In this current military regime of Myanmar, why is it that only the Chin Kuki communities are entering Manipur as refugees, and we don't hear about the Meiteis or the Nagas who are residing in Myanmar not entering in Manipur? Is there some kind of a serious border issue? Not only the border issue, but this particular community is entering a lot more than the Meiteis and the Nagas that are residing there.
If we look at the ethnic composition of Myanmar, and if you look at the Kachin area, and having known the story of Mara Brangseng, who was the chairman of the Kachin Independent Organization, which still continue to be quite a big political issue within Myanmar. And there are many reasons why there are many ethnic groups still, although the very fight for the democratic movement in Myanmar, at the same time there are some ethnic groups looking for political freedom and within Myanmar. And what happens in Myanmar, as I said in the past, that if there is a conflict in Myanmar, in our neighboring country, and if the government is cracking down on a particular community or an ethnic group for being a part of a revolutionary movement or any kind of an insurgency movement within their own country, as we have porous and unmanned international border, we are definitely bound to have people coming for their survival. In any way, as we came to know very last year, that one of the former chief ministers of a particular province from Myanmar was in Mizoram. He came with his family, then he took refuge, and many people started coming to Mizoram, and Mizoram had to face the problem as much as Manipur. Now there is no armed group currently working in Mizoram, as we know. There might be some very dormant groups in Mizoram. However, as we know that there are many militant groups under suspension of operation in Manipur, there might be next of kins and people who are from the same ethnic group. When they come as a part of the community towards this very country, we are definitely bound to have a serious concern because of the political movement happening in Myanmar and having a link in people in India, that is in the state of Manipur. We are definitely bound to see that very difficult state of administration, because some are, in fact, as we know, the Union Home Minister Amit Shah had given a statement in the Indian Parliament that there are people having crossed the border from Myanmar, and they are now in Manipur, which definitely is bound to have a problem. And as we understand, can't hear you.
Hello.
Something is wrong.
Hello, Mr. Ibungochoubi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. There's some interruption. As I said.
Okay, please continue.
The Kachin Independent Army, or the Kachin area of the Myanmar side, having its very strong revolutionary movement within their own country, itself is a serious challenge for the Myanmar government.
Yes.
And as I said, as long as the military junta will try to suppress any kind of a movement in a very violent manner, even having bombarded its own country within the country,
yes,
the refugees are bound to have its own impact in the neighboring states like Mizoram and Manipur. Now, how the state of Manipur or the very country called India will handle that particular issue of people coming from our neighboring states as refugees, this is also something that we have been talking about. We have to take cognizance of from the humanitarian point of view. At the same time, if there is going to be an impact on the geopolitics or the economic development, or even in the political scenario, because people coming from neighboring Myanmar and settling down permanently in its neighboring states, neighboring countries, will definitely create a problem. I think that is also one of the issues being discussed today in the last couple of months that we have in Manipur.
Yes.
That is what we have been saying. And in my earlier statement, in earlier discussions, we have already said that even if the government of India does not have its own mechanism as to how people coming from different neighboring countries would be, this particular issue will be taken care of, the state should have a very strong commitment.
Yes.
The Manipur state or the neighboring states like Tripura, Mizoram, even Assam, facing the regular influx of foreigners.
Yes.
Within the system, they should have a system in Manipur. You cannot have an unproportionate growth proportion in any part of the state. There is an administration, there is a DC, there is an SP. At different level, there is a chief secretary. We should always be vigilant. And of course, we should very clearly say that any people coming from the neighboring state, either in terms of an infiltrator, illegal, or as a refugee, they should report to the nearest police station that I have come from Myanmar. This should be one procedure that the state government should adopt. And then there should be some kind of an integrity, there's some kind of an honesty among the civil administration as to how we keep a register of people who have come in, so that they would be easily identified. And those who have come and not yet reported, they should have another mechanism to counter check it. This is what the voice or the sensible thinking is. If there is anyone coming from the neighboring state. The first thing is we should have an order from the Chief Secretary or the Home Secretary or any government official that we should have a very, very strong mechanism as to how anybody coming from a different country should report to the nearest civil administration. That should be one mechanism. And those who have not reported, there should be another harsher or stringent administrative arm to check and count those who have come in from time to time. I think this should be the way how we should have started in the beginning. It is not late. We can always do it.
Okay, and that is a very interesting and a very good point that Mr. Ibungochoubi that put, that strong, stringent border laws, immigration laws, like reporting to the nearest civil administration, and even deportation codes for illegal immigrants for looking to take shelter in the state. My question to Mr. Junior Luwang is that when it comes to stringent border laws or illegal immigration laws, do you think that NRC suffice everything? Do you think that border fencing suffice all of that? What do you think, Mr. Junior Luwang? Sorry, I think you are on mute, Mr. Luwang. Can you unmute?
Yeah, Amrita, these are two different things. National Register of Citizens and steps to stop illegal immigrants from flowing in. These are two different things. Now, let me just segregate between the two. As Ibungochoubi has already said, that there has to be a system to officially register the refugees flowing in from other parts of the country, or in this context Myanmar, to any part of India, more specifically Manipur, and even Mizoram also. I don't know whether it's happening or otherwise. Mizoram, as on today, house around 40,000 immigrants from Myanmar. But since those are identified, I don't think they have been called illegal immigrants. They have been given the refugee of the status of refugee, and they are being kept in Mizoram. Whereas Manipur officially has around 2,000 something. That's what the official statistics say. Under law, there are provisions to stop and to detect the illegal immigrants in India. Once they come in, the first thing is to register them as a refugee, take the biometrics so that they don't get away. If their biometrics are taken on record, they cannot go for Aadhaar card registration, because once they go for Aadhaar card registration, or they mischievously try to become an Indian citizen through Aadhaar card registration, then the two biometrics will match, and then they will be easily identified as somebody who has come from Myanmar as a refugee, and hence they cannot get Indian citizenship or part of the Indian society. That's something which is very, very important. And we have the Foreigners Act. Of course, the Foreigners Act applies to those foreigners who come to India officially. Once they come to India and then they get registered, they get checked in the airport, and things happen. But that's the legal process. But the flow of, say, migrants from Myanmar to Mizoram or Manipur is slightly different, in the sense that they basically and generally come as refugees. And we have to put a process of taking cognizance of that status first. Secondly, taking specific details about these people who have come in, taking their biometrics, and then taking other provisions, other steps which are as per the laws of India. According to me, the most effective step to check illegal immigration or the flow of, say, unwelcome refugees from Myanmar is to have a proper border fencing in place. We have, India has 1,643 square kilometers of border with Myanmar, crisscrossing different states of the northeast, including Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Manipur, and I suppose even Meghalaya also. Now, unlike in parts of, say, India-Pakistan border, which I think is completely fenced, even Indo-Bangladesh border also, we don't have that kind of a border fencing on India-Myanmar border. Just around 10% of the border is fenced. So that's the immediate step, I think, which the government of India should take, which is border fencing. And I suppose the government of India is taking it, as announced by the government of Manipur some time back, and also by Mr. R.K. Ranjan. in Aizawl. That's what the newspaper report said. Uh, See, we are not in a war, complete official war condition. If you check other countries, like say the flow of refugees from Ukraine to
Yes.
other countries, or the flow of even people from say from Russia to places like Romania and other places, Poland, because they don't want to be part of the army recruitment system. They don't want to be part of the army and they don't want to die. So a lot of people have migrated from say Ukraine and from Russia. In fact, Ukraine was encouraging its people, basically men who are above the age of 60 and women and kids, to get out of Kiev for in the initial phase of the war, and thousands of them have gone to Poland and other countries, and I think Poland was the majority of them. So that kind of a migration or flow of people from one country to another is done through a very official process, detailing records of who have come in, their names, addresses, everything, biometrics. So that is some, even if they can do it in a war position, in a very harsh war position in Ukraine, why can't we do it in the otherwise peaceful borders of Myanmar and India, largely? So there is something which the government has to take very, very seriously. Now coming to NRC, Amrita, see,
Yes.
NRC is not exactly an immediate solution to possible flow of immigrants from Myanmar and other countries. NRC is basically a system where we identify the genuine citizens of India and enter their name in the register of citizens in India. Then we ask people,
Yes.
that you submit official documents
Yes.
based on the base year. In Assam, I think it's 1971,
Yes.
the base year adopted. In Manipur, the debate is going on whether it is 71, 61 or 51. The debate goes on. But
Yes.
once the base year is agreed, and then we go on a drive to identify illegal immigrants by asking them to furnish, credible evidence of Indian citizenship. Once we have that kind of a system, and then whoever have failed to prove their Indian citizenship, then they will be deported. That's how NRC works. But there's some bit of a long-term process of identification of illegal immigrants who are already in India, already in Manipur,
Okay.
already in Mizoram, or already in Assam. That's the process. That's basically an internal process of identifying illegal immigrants already in India.
Okay.
Whereas the situation we are facing today is an unhealthy flow of illegal immigrants from across the border. So that possibly can be checked through a tight border checking system, and other measures like reporting. Of course, a foreigner has to report to the nearest police station, airport checking, this and that, immigration process will take
Yes.
some time. So those processes have to be put in, they are in place or have to be implemented. The problem is not about law. The enough laws in India to identify or to stop an illegal immigrant from entering India. The
Yes.
problem is implementation. It's very, very poorly implemented in the large part of the country. Uh, Mostly, I mean, as we see it today, in Mizoram, in Manipur, uh, we see a lot of illegal immigrants, but those have happened because there is no border checking, and we have not put those standard procedures for stopping illegal immigrants in place properly. Either there is a lot of corruption at the border, or maybe then we are not interested that much in stopping them. So these are the two. This is the basic difference between NRC and the steps to check,
Illegal immigrants.
unhealthy flow of illegal immigrants from across the border. Yes.
Okay. Okay. That is very.
Mm.
That was very interesting. I'll coming to Mr. Ibungochoubi. Okay, I think Mr. Ibungochoubi has left for today, so I'll be coming to, so I have just one more question, just out of interest to Mr. Junior Luwang. Why do you think
Yeah.
that still now, even with all these laws and even with all the facilities to check the illegal immigrant, do you think the government is unwilling, or is there any other reason to check illegal immigration so far? Because as Mr.
Yeah.
Ibungochoubi earlier stated, that this current conflict in Manipur is largely due to illegal immigration. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Amrita, see, the government of India is taking the issues at Indo-Pakistan border or the Indo-Bangladesh border more seriously because we don't have a very friendly relationship with Pakistan. So they look at illegal immigration issue not only from a demographic perspective, but also from the perspective of possible inflow of arms, ammunition, and terrorists from the border, from across the border from
Okay.
Pakistan.
Okay.
So that is why the border fencing with Pakistan is very, very tight. Uh, and coming to Bangladesh, we know it very, very well. A number of Bangladeshi people in India are from Bangladesh. And a lot of them have not been detected.
Okay.
That is why we had that act called the Illegal Immigration Determination by Tribunals Act 1982 in Assam. They were specifically framed to detect such people. People say it was a liberal act, though it was ultimately struck down by the Supreme Court. I was a part of the proceeding.
Okay.
So the difference between the other parts of India or the border areas of India and the Indo-Myanmar border is that Burma is not a threat to India as much as Pakistan is, or to an extent Bangladesh is.
Okay.
Even though we liberated them in 1971, Bangladesh is a threat in terms of their people coming to India and working here. And we are already a very highly populated country. I mean, today, I think we're the most populous country in the world. We have taken China by official reports or by, say, study reports
Yes.
of some universities and agencies in America and in the Western world. We have officially taken over China, although we don't have a census after 2011. So Bangladesh is a threat in terms of their possible say flow of illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. That is why our border is quite tight. And second, we have that northeast insurgency problem because a number of insurgents used to go to Bangladesh and get trained there and come back. So these are two different issues we had with Bangladesh, and of course with Pakistan we know. With Myanmar, I think India has been very, very tolerant, in spite of the government being a military government for a very long time.
Yes.
Of course, there was a brief lull because the semi-democratic government
Yes.
under Aung San Suu Kyi took place for some time, and then now she is in jail. India has been trying to basically extend the olive branch to Myanmar because we need Myanmar to be with us because Myanmar has been increasingly been taken over by China, and we are
Yes.
trying to play
The
what do you call
mediator.
the angel
Yes.
in terms of reviving the economy to Myanmar. It's sometimes called the charm offensive. I think China is a little flat on it, and China has almost taken over Myanmar in terms of regulating or in terms of its economic policy or economic relationship with Myanmar. As I said, around 30% of the Myanmar the foreign trade is with China, whereas India accounts for just around 6%. So India has been trying for a very, very long time to have that kind of a cordial relationship with Myanmar, no matter the government is a military government or a democratic moment, because we can't change our neighbor, we have to live with them.
Yes.
So that's the issue. There's a reason as to why India has been very, very
Offensive
specific
with
about having
yeah.
a tight fence on the border with Myanmar. Although of course Myanmar also has been used as a launching ground for a number of insurgent groups. We know it around, even today I was reading it, that around 7 insurgent groups from Manipur are having a little free movement in Myanmar because the military junta has developed some kind of a relationship with them in terms of their own geopolitics in Myanmar. Their relationship has grown better. That's what I'm told. But in spite of all these issues, the government of India has been helping Myanmar to a large extent. You mentioned that project, and even a trial, this Three Nation project.
Yes,
the
the
roadway
trilateral
project.
highways, yeah.
So, but as time goes on, I'm very, very hopeful that India has to fence the border. As tight as it is in
I think time is coming. Yeah, time is
India. Yeah.
Almost coming to an end, so I would like.
Okay.
I would like to wrap up this show for today. It was a very interesting and engaging session. We learned from our two panelists that even though with the heavy Chinese involvement, the Russian, that is not much of a threat, but instead the real issue that has been troubling Manipur for the past 4 months is especially due to the illegal immigration, and that to check it, we need to tighten up our illegal immigration laws, our border fencing, and we need to be focused on that. We had a very engaging session today, but due to time constraint, we'll have to wrap up today's episode right here. I'd like to thank our panelists, Mr. Ibungochoubi, Executive Editor, Manipur Mail, and Mr. Advocate General Luwang, Supreme Court of India. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Amrita. Thank you. Yeah.
I'd also like to thank our viewers for tuning in tonight. Please share your feedback and comments with us. We'll be back again next Monday, same time, with more exciting topics. Let's keep watching Elite TV. This is Amrita signing off. Have a good week.